So back to this again. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and I'm just going to. This video is about an article I seen last week in the Irish Times, and it's called "Young Irish Women Suffer Highest Levels of Depression in Europe," with the subtitle being "EU Study Finds Ireland as one of the highest rates of cyberbullying and the highest level of binge drinking." So I'm just going to look at that briefly, and I'm not so much to pick the article apart in any great depth, but just to use it as a springboard towards posing certain questions related to Irish women, young women in particular. I think it's from the age of 15 to 24 the article's talking about. So we'll just go over that, and then later we'll pose some questions about how we view Irish women, what we're doing with Irish women, and possible problems that aren't addressed or aren't highlighted often enough in modern day Ireland. So the article starts out by saying that Eurofound researchers say nearly 17% of Irish women aged 15 to 24 are at risk of developing symptoms of depression, and that number is more than twice the number of young Irish men at risk, and it's the highest rate in Europe. Also, young women aged 15 to 24 in the majority of EU states were found to be more likely to suffer depression than their male peers. So I suppose it's not necessarily just an Irish thing, although this article is focusing in on that, and I will be as well. But it tends to be the same kind of pattern across Western cultures, I suppose. Higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicide, and higher rates of drug addiction. Another study cited here highlights the tendency for women to internalize feelings of anger or feelings of loneliness or feelings of sadness, and which can lead on to self-harm and eating disorders like anorexia and bulimia. I suppose this isn't shocking, as men would tend to project their anger or project their frustrations in risky behaviour or aggressive behaviour. Even suicide and stuff, the rates for suicide for young men, especially in Ireland as well, is higher than young women. There are three factors highlighted as contributing towards making the formative years in your late teenage years and early adult years more stressful, and they were stresses from school, expectations from parents, and peer and societal pressures. A link between higher rates of depression and people coming from poorer backgrounds is also made here. Probably not surprising, and also Ireland has the highest rate of not just young people experiencing symptoms of depression, but young people experiencing chronic depression. Between the ages of 15 and 24, the rate is 12%, followed by Finland at 11%, and so on. The next part of the article is a little bit strange, because while it speaks of a decreased rate of young people being at risk of poverty and exclusion, dropping from 42% of 18 to 24-year-olds in 2011 to 32% in 2016, it also speaks of the increased rate of homelessness. There's been a 78% increase in homeless and young people, again aged 18 to 24, between 2017 and 2018, with 1 in 3 homeless people in Ireland now being a child. It then goes on to talk about physical health in relation to Ireland, with levels of obesity, about 18% of boys and 13% of girls aged 15 were found to be overweight or obese, and that's in 2014. Also, as stated before, Ireland has the highest level of binge drinking, with 32% of young people reportedly binge drinking on a weekly basis. Young women in Ireland were found to suffer cyberbullying more than their male peers in Ireland, while Ireland had one of the highest rates of cyberbullying in Europe. Finally, the article highlights the fact that between the ages of 12 and 24, the population in Europe of that age bracket fell by 10 million between 2011 and 2016, And they attribute that largely to the amount of people that are leaving, possibly to Canada and Australia and other countries for work. So the amount of young people in Europe has declined by 10 million in the last less than 10 years. So I suppose, excuse me, reading things like this, and I suppose just being in Ireland and knowing people and speaking to people and knowing girls and knowing boys and seeing how they're living their lives and what they're suffering from and how they're struggling, it can't help but leave you with questions. And the article spoke of depression, symptoms of depression being higher in girls, and that could be attributed to the fact that the boys of the same age are probably after killing themselves before they get a chance to highlight or to add to the stats, I suppose, add to the questions posed of, are you suffering depression symptoms, etc. Because the rates for younger boys in Ireland committing suicide is far higher than girls. And then just the reasons highlighted are the pressures from school, pressures from parents, expectations from peers and society, and cyberbullying. And I suppose I'd just ask, with the pressure attributed to the leaving cert and getting into college and going on and becoming successful and whatever and getting a degree, yeah. Is that what everyone wants? We're kind of, the path that is handed to us, it's not clearly created by ourselves. It's like these are the things that you're expected to do. And if you don't do them, then you're not being a successful person and you're possibly letting your parents down. And in terms of young people highlighting pressure and expectations from their parents as a contributing factor in their levels of depression, or as a cause of depression, depressive symptoms, I would ask, what is the need for the pressure from the parents, or what are the expectations coming from the parents? Should you not be setting an example as opposed to dictating what your child should be doing? You should be probably creating an individual who feels comfortable enough with you and supported enough through you to be able to decide their own life path. It doesn't have to be this script where you get your 600 points in your leaving cert, you go on and become XYZ from college. It doesn't have to be that way. And from talking to people and looking around and whatever, that tends to be the trend. Yeah. And of course, I don't want that to sound like some kind of airy fairy idea of just bring your kids into the world and just leave them do what they want to do and leave them make all the decisions themselves. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about consistent discipline and structure and guidelines. Not so much just telling your kids what to do because they kind of have to do that, and playing to the power that you have as a parent. You can instill discipline and motivation and desire in your children without telling them what to do and why to do it, or probably not even why to do it, which is a problem. And I suppose, as is a tendency in human beings as well, there's hypocrisy at play in that. Parents will dictate to their children that they should do this and they should do that, and this is how to live your life. But then the children could be looking at their parents not living up to those same standards. So the children might become disillusioned with their parents and disillusioned with adults and society as a whole in general, by seeing that what I'm being told here is not actually acted out in people I'm supposed to look up to. So then, instead of viewing our parents as pillars of hope or beacons of hope in some way, we kind of get turned away from them and see them as just another institution, or just another figure that's seeking to take the fun out of your life, or take the imagination out of you by dictating how you should live your life. And so we turn from our parents as a source of support and guidance, and we place that then in our peer group, which leaves us open then to being bullied and to running the risk of being ostracized and shamed So as a result of that and wanting to fit in with our peer group, we tend to disown certain traits or characteristics in ourselves that make us stand apart, make us stand out in some way as probably better or more creative or more skilled in some way or funny or whatever. And this tends to be especially the case with women, because women tend to be more group oriented than men do. And that, I don't think that should come as a shock to many people. And also the games that teenage girls and young girls can play with each other tend to be more prolonged and underhanded and vicious. You know, men tend to express it explicitly in terms of fighting or open argument, but women tend to hide it and be more concealed and devious, I suppose is a good word. And so yeah, if we're after bringing our kids up to become kind of disillusioned with parents and they turn away to their peer group, you're leaving your kids exposed to ridicule and torment and the pressures of fitting in and casting off probably the best parts of yourself to fit in with the average or fit in with the group, you know. And we're not giving them the tools to be able to deal with that, or we're not building up their self-esteem enough to be able to look at a group and say, okay, what's going on in this group is not good for me, therefore I'm going to pull apart from it, you know. Because then if they don't have the support at home and they don't have it in their peer group, where are they left? They're just cast adrift. And that's when suicide and self-harm and completely destructive behaviours can kick in. And even then, in terms of role models as well, you look at the media, you know, you look at the music, the content of the music, the visuals of the videos and stuff. Is that a good image that we're giving to our girls, that we're exposing our girls to? And I suppose another thing that is probably not highlighted as much is the reliance on technology for stimulation and for entertainment. You know, the phone especially, like from Snapchat and all that stuff, and group chats and YouTube and everything else. You know, there's hardly ever a quiet moment in the day. You know, so our young people have less alone time. And as a result of that, we lose the ability, or we never cultivate the ability to reflect on ourselves. You know, to sit, to listen to our bodies, to get into our own rhythms and understand what's going on in our body when I feel a certain way, or when this happens, or when that happens. You know, so the ability to link emotions to external events or to internal states, it it's lost as a result of the constant need to entertain ourselves and to bombard ourselves with information from the external world. And as a result of that as well, we don't sit around and think or just wonder about things anymore as much, you know. So we're not in tune with our desires or what our goals are or what we'd like to become or what we imagine our life could be, you know. And as we, it's a feedback loop, you know. As we get drawn into the external world, we lose our inner world. And as a result of that, then as that becomes more empty, we need to fill that then with more external stimulation and more validation from people. So I spoke of just having questions earlier on. A lot of questions, or posing questions. But there are some facts as well related to this that can be offered that will help, you know, and probably will help a lot more than just this kind of superficial stuff that article gave, because it talked about lower socioeconomic levels being linked with higher levels of depression and stuff. But what's also linked with that is the poorer the background or the lower the socioeconomic bracket, that's also linked with a higher rate of fatherless homes. And where that comes into play with women and kids as well, but we're focused on women here, or young girls, is that having a father in the home is actually linked with higher levels of self-esteem and less levels of addiction and mental health issues in teenage years. So having a father in the home benefits girls hugely. And as I did in other videos, the rates of fatherless homes in Ireland has been growing for the last 15 or 20 years. And a disastrous consequence of not having a father in the home for a girl to look to and to listen to and to speak with is they're not given the guidance or even just the physical tools of understanding and knowing what it's like to be around a man, to get approval from your father. If that's lacking, then girls grow up not really knowing what they should give to a man and what they should take from a man, in terms of behavior, in terms of approval or attention, and what you see then is, along with the social media and all that kind of stuff, is if we're lacking that internal sense of self and self-acceptance, we end up just focusing on the physical or on the surface, so girls end up attempting to relate to others in terms of what they look like or what they can do for a person or for a man, instead of cultivating their own values and their own treasures and developing their character and knowing that this is what I have to offer along with what they look like or whatever, what they have physically, not the other way around. The physical side is a bonus or it's a help or whatever, but it's not long lasting, whereas values and good character and good self-worth, they are lasting, and they are what people should be using to attract another. And building on from that, then we have the relationship with sex or to sex. What guidance are young girls getting in terms of what their relationship to physical sex or to their own sexuality should be? Is sex something that you give when someone else wants it? Is it completely divorced from love? Have they ever been introduced to that idea? Has sex become a purely physical act for young girls? And if so, is there a loss that comes with that? Again, in another video, I highlighted the fact that promiscuity is linked with lower levels of self-worth, and just which comes first? Does the promiscuity come because of the low self-worth, or does it feed into low self-worth? Who knows? It's probably a feedback loop again. But are we having those conversations with young girls? Are we countering the image that media is giving to young women? The fact that they are their sexuality, that's what gets them places. That's if you look a certain way, or if you put on this or wear that or do your eyebrows this way, then you can get whatever you want. Are we feeding into that, or are we protecting our young girls against that? And then in terms of binge drinking as well, like 1 in 3 young Irish people report binge drinking on a weekly basis. This is nearly coupled with the promiscuity, and poor decisions as well. And think about it, just having a hangover consistently every week, or having what they call the fear, of not really being completely fully sure what you did the night before. And then your friends are kind of laughing about it, and you come to believe that this is just the natural way of being young, being young and stupid and go off and do what you want. You're here for a good time, not a long time. Is that the message we want to give young people? And if that is the message that they're taking up, when does that stop? When does that end? When do they become more mature or develop insight and wisdom, Another thing that's interesting is the fact that because the internet and stuff has been around for a good while now, the exposure to pornography for young girls and young boys it's nearly all pervasive, and you get probably getting younger and younger and younger. So not only are a lot of fathers not there to kind of guide or to show a young girl how respect is given from a man. The their first relationship towards sex as well is probably built on watching pornography or interacting with a young boy or man who himself watches porn and who has had his interactions and relationship with sex shaped and molded through watching paid, I don't call them actors or whatever, but watching paid people have meaningless sex on video, and the damage that does along the way as well. Again, because that comes with implicit expectations both for men and for women. That they should carry on a certain way and act a certain way and be able to do certain things. Again, and are we defending our young people against that? That's the continuous question. Are we going along with society because we as adults don't want to stand out and look a little bit different? So we don't allow our kids to develop that either. So we'll go along to get along, and you can be sure that you're going to bring your kids with you as well, carrying that same kind of mentality. But is it worth it? Is fitting in with the culture and fitting in with society worth the depression in our young people and possible suicide in our young people and probably long-term issues with mental health, who in turn will probably hand that down to their kids as well because we decided we didn't want to make tough decisions and stand out? These are questions we should ask ourselves, even if we don't have kids. We might have kids soon or whenever. It's worth asking. And on top of asking ourselves those questions, as brothers, as uncles, as fathers, and as for women as well, as sisters and aunts and mothers, we can ask the girls in our lives those questions as well. Do you like what's going on around you? Do you like the way your friends act? What do you think of XYZ? And also, what do you think it is to be a woman? Is it anything? Is there any difference between being a woman and being a man or being a dog? What do you feel about this? What do you think a woman should be? What do you think as a woman you'd like to be? Are we asking our young people and children these questions? Because if not, their beliefs and their views are going to be shaped somehow. So if we're not helping them, and number one, setting an example for them which is virtuous and good and honest and not hypocritical, we encourage them and we foster that in them as well, to cultivate that in themselves. Because if we're not doing that, then we're subjecting them to what's popular in society, the mainstream view of what these things are. And what tends the common trend now is the fact that there is no nature to a woman. That's one idea floating around. There is no, a woman can be whatever she wants. She can do all the same things as a man because she's no different. Is that true? What do we think of that? What do our daughters think of that? Again, questions that need to be asked. Are you asking them? Are we asking them? Probably not. Another worldview or perspective on things that's kind of, I won't say dominant, but it's there, it's around, and again, it's in part of the environment in which we're going to send our kids out into. And it's the view that men are somehow inherently wrong or evil in some way, So if we're exposing our daughters to this view, what does that do for them? To take on the idea or to be subjected to the idea or belief that their brothers or their fathers are potential rapists in some way, just based on the fact or the idea that they are a man. What kind of, how will this colour their interactions with men in the future? Will they take this on and constantly be looking at just the negative in men, just those things that will kind of go along with that belief? Again, are we defending our young women against this kind of a view? Or are we even behaving in such a way that endorses that view or shows them that yes, this is the case? Are we combating that view by showing our daughters that men are worthwhile and have great things to offer them? Are we doing that? And now, like, I suppose to put the Irish girls in context of the country they live in, the family they're from, etc. You know, these young girls do have to grow up with the fact that there's a higher rate of their brothers killing themselves than probably has been the case before, or their fathers even. It's young men and middle-aged men that have the highest rates of suicide in this country. They have to grow up with higher rates of divorce and the impact that divorce has on young people, and also with addiction in the family. You've seen there that 1 in 3 young people admit to binge drinking on a weekly basis. It's every week, 1 in 3. So, did they see that growing up? Have they taken that on? Are they a product of the system that they've come in, and the family system? Again, these are all questions. Is this what we want to perpetuate down the line? Seeing that all of these things, the suicide rates, the divorce rates, and the problems going along with them, and addiction rates, they've all been increasing consistently over the years. And I see no reason as to why that would stop. It's up to us as individuals to make a stand against that and to kind of ask questions, pose questions, and enact things that will stifle that or stop that completely, because otherwise it'll just continue on, and I suppose it's not necessarily us. We could be grown ups or seeing the end of our years, but what kind of world are we leaving to our young people? Because at the moment it doesn't seem to be helping them that much. And on top of that, then you have the young people who are energetic and motivated and want better. They look around and they see that this isn't a country for me. This is probably not the place where I plant my deepest roots, so they kind of get up and leave. They go to England or Europe or Canada or Australia or whatever country, Japan, and they create their futures there, which is tough on them as well, but it's also tough on the family that they leave behind, the siblings that they leave behind, that the person that got up and left the country, they might have been their younger siblings' role model or older siblings' role model, and now they're gone. And then if that child is left with the inability to believe that they could do those same things, or if they just wanted to stay in Ireland, then they're losing big time there. Now, what's interesting in Ireland in the last couple of decades is the rates at which people are going to college and graduating from college with third level degrees, as opposed to in the 90s, the 13% of people had a third level education, whereas in 2016 it's up to 42%. And with women aged between 25 and 39, they tend to stay in education longer, and I'll come back to that. But what we're looking at now is the college years. It's become, I suppose, a rite of passage, or a kind of the archetypal student now. You finish secondary school, you go on to college, you pick whatever courses you get into, and then you spend the next 3 or 4 years partying, and cramming the night before and just scraping through exams or scraping through assignments, and then probably not even using the degree at the end of it. So in Ireland as well, one question that we should ask, given that most of us are like one generation away from having nothing. We've come from having very little in the last 20 or 30 years. So now we're looking at the opportunities that are open for our young people in college and the grants you can get for college. So you're basically getting a degree paid for. So one question that we should ask is, because we probably didn't have those opportunities, are we shepherding our kids into those opportunities and elevating them, the idea of having a college degree, up to such a standard that we think we're doing good by our kids by kind of pressuring them into going to college or university, getting a degree, and becoming whatever? Are we stopping and asking them, is this really what you want to do? Is there some other talent or some other skill that you have that you'd like to cultivate that college doesn't allow for? Are we asking our kids that? And again, as I said a minute ago, among the ages 25 to 39 of women, they tend to stay in education longer. So if you have a mid-20s, late-20s, mid-30s woman, and she's spending the majority of her time in college, under stress to get good grades and to finish off the thing and get a degree, and then start a career possibly, are we sacrificing our young women's or our women's most reproductive years for the sake of an education so they can go and work for someone else and create someone else money, so at the end of it they can say, I did something with myself? Are we asking them, instead of that, would you like to create a family for yourself? And I'm not saying that this should go one way or the other, I'm just saying, are we allowing that opportunity? Or are we kind of thumbing our nose a bit at the idea of a woman that just wants to have a family? Is that such a wrong thing? Are we looking down our snout a bit at that, at the housewife or at the mother at home? And in the long term, which is more beneficial? The career woman or the home wife? And again, going from questions to some stats or statistics now. In America, the life satisfaction has been declining for women since the 70s. It used to be much higher. Now it's dipping down, with men's life satisfaction a little bit higher than women's. And in the UK in 2014, 83% of stay-at-home moms reported that their life felt worthwhile. They felt like they were living a meaningful life as a result of staying home and caring for their kids and creating a home and a family. And again, a question, have we put young women off the idea of creating a family? Have we pressured them into wasting their reproductive years stressing in college so they can go on and make money? Again, all worthwhile questions. Are we asking them? And just to wrap it up, I suppose I have just another couple of questions. And this involves men and women, or boys and girls interactions. And as parents and as relatives or older people, as the maybe not so mature elders of the village, are we teaching our girls the difference between males' attentions? Because we can have a physical attraction or a physical desire for another person, and that might be empty of actually wanting what is good for that person or what is good in that person. So are we teaching our girls how to scout for that, how to test, what questions to ask, what scenarios to kind of impose that might allow them an inkling into understanding what the man's motivation might be? Are we teaching our young girls how to present themselves? Given that it's a to and a fro, if you present yourself in such a way, you will probably draw certain kinds of attention. Are we telling girls this? Are we telling girls that it doesn't have to be that way? Just because your friends and all what you see around you might be presenting themselves or dressing certain ways, are we telling our girls and allowing our girls the strength to be able to realise that they don't have to do that too? Are we teaching our girls how to know and express what they want from a man and a partner and their life, and how to seek that and how to get that and how to nurture that, and what they also must bring to the table? It can't just be your body that you're bringing to the table. You need to cultivate values and a worldview that's conducive to longevity in a relationship. Are we teaching our girls these things? Are we talking to them about them even? And as parents, are we trying to fit our kids into our ideological framework or worldview? As I talked about earlier, the going along to get along, the not wanting to stand out, or not wanting to have your kid be the different one, not the popular one. God forbid your child isn't popular with all the peers, you know. Because long term, ask ourselves this as adults: long term, did this matter? Did all those people, as when we as teenagers who we sought their approval, where are they now? Are we still friends with all of them, or have we just let that stuff wash over us and fade into the distance of the past? You know, are we telling our girls that the things that you believe matter now, they cease to matter as much as you get older? You know, and just because you might not want the family now does not mean that you won't when you're older. And I suppose people, if you're listening, you probably, if you think about it, you can probably think of an example of a woman who did the career route, didn't have kids, and now she's 40 and she's kind of regretting it a bit. You know, there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but the exceptions can prove the rule as well. And I'll just give an example at the end now to kind of highlight what I'm getting at, or not even what I'm getting at, what I got at, hopefully. And there's a family member, he was talking to a young girl in a support group thing that he was involved in, and he was asking her, like, what do you want from life? And her answer was that she'd just like to get a house and do a course. And he asked what course, and she said she didn't really know, just the course. You know, it wasn't even I'd like to have a family and have a home. It was just get a home and do a course. You know, so we're given these goals of do a course, get an education, and whatever. Doesn't seem to matter, like, you know. Like, you go and you fit into the categories of courses that colleges have, instead of possibly pursuing your own inner drives towards whatever talent that it is. Are we nurturing these things in our young girls? And that article at the start would seem to highlight that we're not. We're losing them.